Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lunch Break Science. I'm Ariel Johnson from the Leakey Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting human evolution research and sharing discoveries in programs like this. We'd like to thank the Ann and Gordon Getty Foundation and Camilla and George Smith, whose generous support made this episode of Lunch Break Science possible. Here with us today is Leakey Foundation grantee, Alba García de la Chica. Alba, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Alba is joining us from the Formosa region of Argentina, where she is a postdoctoral researcher at the Owl Monkey Project. Some of you may remember the Owl Monkey Project from episode 17 of Lunch Break Science that featured Alba's colleague, Dr. Eduardo Fernandez Duque. Alba originally hails from Madrid in Spain and was a doctoral student at the University of Barcelona. Her research takes her into the Gran Chaco of Argentina to observe owl monkeys. Today, she'll be discussing several aspects of the behavioral repertoire of monogamous owl monkeys. Before we hear from Alba, though, if you are watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Leakey Foundation Live, you can post questions for Alba at any time in the chat, and she'll be answering those questions live during the episode. The earlier you get those questions in, the more likely she will be able to answer them. So, Alba, my first question for you is, what are owl monkeys, and why do you study them?
Owl monkeys are small. When I say small, I'm talking about 1.5 kilograms. Arboreal primates. They move on the top of the canopy trees that inhabit great part of Latin America. And they are unique in many aspects of their biology and their sociality. Owl monkeys are the only anthropoid primates that are nocturnal. We know that many lemurs and other strepsirrhines are nocturnal, but owl monkeys are the only platyrrhine species that show high levels of nocturnal activity. They are only pretty unique in their social system, and I will tell you a little bit more about this during my presentation. But as you have seen on these beautiful pictures, they live in small social groups, usually family groups, where a pair live with the offspring of at least one of them. So they present many similarities with many Western human populations. This is one of the reasons why they are an excellent model to study evolutionary and proximate mechanisms of human social evolution.
So how do you go about studying them?
In the field, we mostly do observational studies, although I will be presenting also and sharing with you some of the results we got from playback experiments I conducted in the field. And this is a question that most people ask us, like, okay, what do you do when you are with the monkeys? In the case of our population in Formosa, Argentina, this is part of the Owl Monkey Project led by Dr. Eduardo Fernandez Duque, and the monkeys here are cathemeral. So besides this activity I told you about during the night, when night luminosity is low, when the moon is new, the monkeys also move during parts of the day, usually at sunset and sunrise. And we have done some follows during nighttime, but we mostly follow the monkeys during the day. And we monitor about 8 to 10 groups almost every week. And when we are with the monkeys, we collect all types of information. We collect data about group size and composition. We collect life history data. We collect behavioral data. We register pretty much any behavior the monkeys do following a standardized protocol. We collect acoustic data, so we record their vocalizations. We collect data about the space use, and we collect biological samples that we then use for hormonal and genetic studies. And of course, observational studies on wild populations, they have some limitations. There are many, many variables that we cannot control for, and identifying individuals, it is sometimes very hard. But we get to see these behaviors in their natural environment, so we can evaluate their functional values. And this has also allowed us to identify and to understand some biological processes that would have only been possible to see in the wild. For example, what happened with the monkeys after they leave their natal groups. So this is something that is obviously not possible to see in captive settings. So this is what we do with the monkeys. We collect every piece of information we can about them.
So the Owl Monkey Project has been collecting data for over 20 years. What is the importance of long-term field research sites like yours, and what do you do with all of that data?
Well, it is by knowing life history patterns and pretty much their variation that we can get insight into the adaptive strategies of any species. Knowing these life history traits includes knowing, for example, the age of animals at first reproduction, how many infants they have, their dispersal patterns, how long they live, or how much they weigh. And only by knowing these traits, we can fully understand why a species acts the way it does. And the adaptive importance of life history or social behavior cannot be fully understood or appreciated without information from wild populations. It is also sometimes the case that the events related with life history milestone, with really important events, that these are really brief or infrequent. So it is usually required to have multi-year and multi-generation data on identified individuals to be able to understand these patterns. Also, as you may probably know, primates are characterized by having relatively long lifespans. So in the case of primatological studies, it is especially important the existence of projects spanning many years, sometimes even decades, to get to see these specific milestones. Such long-term projects, as the one in the monkey project, allow to monitor individuals continuously, sometimes through their entire life, as it is the case here within the monkey project. At the moment, we have some groups where we are going through the 4th generation of identified monkeys. So we know, okay, this is the grandson of that other monkey we knew. But of course, maintaining these type of projects presents a lot of challenge for researchers, including, among others, but not only, maintaining the levels of habituation to observers and tracking animals continuously. And of course, this usually requires having people all the time in the field. So a lot of work.
Oh, absolutely. Long-term field research sites are just absolutely invaluable, and they are increasingly facing gaps in funding and emergencies. If you're watching this and and your long-term primate research site is experiencing these circumstances, please check out the link we've shared in the chat to learn more about the Leakey Foundation's Primate Research Fund. And if you're passionate about primates and want to know how you can make a difference for vulnerable primates, long-term field research sites, and their local staff members, consider supporting the Primate Research Fund. We've shared a link to donate as well in the chat. Alba, though, when did you become interested in studying human evolution?
Well, I studied psychology, so I have always been very interested in behavior, especially in how social behavior evolved. So during my last year in college, I did all the courses related to evolution, research methodology, and animal behavior. And for my graduate thesis, I joined the primatology department. And I remember I was so happy back then because I would get the chance to do research in a captive colony of common marmosets. My professors there, Susana Sanchez, Ana Fidalgo, and especially Jose Manuel Caperos, they told me a lot about the cooperative breeding system that these common marmosets present. And it was during my time there when I became more fascinated about animal sociality. And even when there are many other great animal models relevant for understanding the evolution of sociality, in my case, I was always pretty sure that I wanted to keep studying non-human primates as a way to better understand evolutionary mechanisms of human behavior. So this took me to get my master's in primatology at the University of Barcelona. And after I finished it, I realized that even when these captive studies are needed for many research topics, the questions I wanted to explore, I would do it better in a wild population. And I also, to be honest, I also wanted to know if I would be able to do any field work at all, because I am from Madrid and I haven't had much contact with nature before. But at that time, Eduardo, he posted an announcement on a primatological website looking for research assistant. So I applied, and here I am. I realized I could actually do some field works, and I realized how much I love seeing the monkeys in the field. So in 2017, I started my PhD, and I just finished it a few months ago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's definitely it's a feat to get through. What was your first experience out in the field like? Not really knowing what to expect.
Well, it was shocking, that's for sure. I didn't even know what to pack. So I had these 1,000 questions that I sent in over 1 million emails to the team that was already here in Formosa. I didn't even know how to use a compass. And of course, I wasn't fully prepared for all the insects here. In fact, I think it was during my first or second week that I had this terrible allergic reaction to all the mosquito bites I had on my legs. I also kind of freaked out when during one of my first nights in the field, I felt a snake under my tent. So it was super scary. But somehow your body gets used to it and you learn and you get new skills. And it is totally worth it. Like fieldwork is really fun sometimes. And it gave me the chance to be around the monkeys, to see the infants being born, to see them grow, and see them become adults in different groups, to actually see their whole history. It also gave me the chance to see a lot of cool animals that there was no other way I could have seen in the wild without being here. Actually, for weeks, my closest roomie was this caiman that used to chill near my tent. And the photo of a puma, here it is from a camera trap. But I actually saw a huge one on my way to the forest. So the really interesting system the monkeys present that I will tell you a little bit more about later, and all these cool adventures I had in the field, all this made me want to stay here a little bit longer than previously expected.
How did receiving your Leakey Foundation grant impact your research and your career?
Well, I think pretty much everyone getting into studying biological anthropology, behavioral ecology, or evolutionary biology, we all know about the huge role that Leakey Foundation has in funding projects all over the world. In my case, the grant impacted my research pretty much by making it possible. It truly allowed me to start my PhD research in the field. And I told you about how important it is to have identified individuals and to monitor the animals constantly. But this requires equipment, this requires the help of assistants, and this requires maintaining a vehicle that gets you to the field. So the pictures maybe not reflect all that, but it is for sure the work of a team that allows a research project to actually work. So my grant from Leakey and the help from the Owl Monkey Project, they both had an immense impact on my ability to do my work.
Well, I'm really excited to hear more about your research. I feel like Eduardo hinted a little bit about it during his episode, so I really can't wait to get in. But before we turn the virtual floor over to you, Alba, if you are enjoying this episode of Lunch Break Science, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook or Twitter to receive the latest reminders of upcoming episodes. So now let's turn the floor over to Alba and hear more about her research.
Okay, give me 1 second. And you guys should be seeing my screen?
Yes, oh, there we go.
Okay.
I'll see you on the other side.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ariel, for the presentation and for the little interview. My name is Alba García de la Chica, and I will tell you a little bit more about my work studying owl monkeys. Okay. So, well, there is an incredible diversity of animal social systems, and this variation is present between and within species. I focus my research on the study of the evolutionary and proximate mechanisms that regulate a social system that it is relatively infrequent in mammals. And I do so studying Asara's owl monkeys. I told you that you can find owl monkeys pretty much from Panama to North Argentina, and along their whole distribution, the social organization of these monkeys is pair living. So they are always found in small groups composed by a heterosexual pair, one or two smaller individuals, and an infant. These monkeys are pair bonded, so they share a durable and emotional attachment with their partners, and they sleep, forage, and move together. They mate monogamously. Our monkeys, at least in our population, they do not cheat their partners. And males and females, they share parental duties. In fact, males are really, really involved in taking care of their infants, and they are the main carriers of those from the first week of life of the infants. And our viewers may be correctly thinking that many of these traits, like living with your partner or having an emotional attachment with them or raising children together, that those are really similar to what a great amount of humans also do. And yes, they are correct. In fact, we also share some other morphological and behavioral traits with these species that present this type of social system of pair living and sexually monogamous animals. So these morphological and behavioral traits are reduced sexual dimorphism. This is males and females are similar in size, or they look similar, or they act similar. Reduced testis size, consent ovulation, selective social interactions, and selective aggression. And a huge question in biological anthropology has been, okay, so why? Why can we see all these different species often presenting all these similar traits? And well, classically, the common factor proposed to understand the evolution to this type of social system has been reduced intrasexual competition, specifically reduced male competition. In these pair living sexually monogamous species, we do not usually read about these, the big males you can see here in the picture fighting. We do not usually read about males fighting each other in pair living species. But then, in the population we study in Formosa, Argentina, we frequently witness really aggressive, sometimes even lethal fights between same-sex individuals. So this took us to think, okay, so what's going on with this idea of low competition in pair-living monogamous species? Well, what it was going on, it was that we were witnessing encounters with floaters. It has been the work of the All Monkey Project that has shown that in our population, besides these groups I told you about, these small social groups, about 25-30% of the population is also composed by solitary individuals, by floaters. These floaters do not belong to a social group, but instead they float around the periphery of established groups. And these floaters are sexually mature individuals who have these pairs from the groups where they were born, or less often old adults that have been evicted by another floater from the group where they already hold a reproductive position. Males and females, these pairs, when they are between 2 to 5 years old, which is more or less when they reach sexual maturity. These floaters are not permanently associated with other monkeys. In fact, in our population, we have never registered two floaters becoming a pair and establishing their new territory. Instead, the only option to get a breeding position seems to be by expelling and replacing an adult that it is already in one of these established groups. These events of replacement, they occur at similar rates for males and females. So it seems that it is both sexes that experience high levels of intrasexual competition. And even when the role of floaters has been kind of overlooked in the theoretical models that try to explain this social system, they certainly increase the sexual competition for resident adults. So for my work, I wanted to explore a little bit more about the mechanisms regulating this intrasexual competition. So first, I did so by evaluating one of these traits that I mentioned you before, the sexual dimorphism. We know that all monkeys do not show any visual indicator of which sex they are. Not in body size, as you can see here in the picture, males and females are the same size, they are the same color, and they're pretty much the same even in their genitalia. So they are also very similar in their behavioral repertoire. But for regulating social dynamics between individuals and for finding a mate, monkeys must be able to tell the sex of the other one apart. So I first evaluated one of the most important forms of communication in neotropical primates. This is their vocal communication, specifically their loud calls. These calls have been proposed to serve several functions in primates. And from our observations in the field, we knew that floaters and subadults, they emit a type of vocalization that we call hoot, and they emit these hoots from the border of the group's territories. We also knew that this hoot, we could hear two different subtypes that we call tonal and graph hoots, and they sound like this. The first one was a tonal, the second one was a graph. So first, I analyzed the acoustic structure of both types of calls, and I found that tonals and graphs, they are mainly different in their dominant frequency and their entropy. Their entropy is how noisy a sound is. And as you can see here I'm gonna use the laser, as you can see here, graph hoots, they have higher values of both of these acoustic features. But most importantly for the questions we wanted to answer is that by analyzing behavioral data, we found that hoots are sexually dimorphic. This was that females only vocalize tonals and males only vocalize graphs. So now we knew that when floaters and subadults emit this type of vocalization, the other monkeys could potentially know their sex of the caller. So this gave us the idea to explore the behavioral mechanisms involved in regulating this intrasexual competition. Now that we know that the monkeys know the sex of the caller, we wanted to know, okay, how do they react when they hear them, when they hear the tonal or graph hoots? And remember that these calls are emitted by solitaries or individuals who will be soon become solitaries. So it is likely, like the function of these calls, it is to let the other monkeys know that they are available for some kind of romance, like they are available as a potential couple or partner. Also, based on indirect evidence, we already knew that this intrasexual competition has consequences, and it has consequences for both, for pairs and for floaters. For pairs, on average, an old monkey who had 2 or more partners would produce 25% less offspring per decade of tenure than an individual that has had only one partner. And for solitaries, we knew that they were facing also the consequences of this intrasexual competition. They do seem to face higher rates of injuries, such as broken ears or any type of scars. And as you can see here, this is the proportion of individuals. And this is, all these are different type of injuries. And floaters here in orange, they show higher values than individuals that are still living in their natal groups. But we did not know what were the behavioral mechanisms associated with this competition. We did not have any systematic register of how do pairs react toward the presence of competitors. And as it is usually the case in field studies, sometimes we need to create these artificial or experimental situations to understand a phenomenon or just to observe that in detail. So I created this artificial situation conducting playback experiments in the field. Such as the main question was, what do pairs defend from competitors? Are they defending their partners, or are they defending the food resources that they have in their territories? So if the monkeys were defending their partners, one could expect that a pair will show stronger behavioral responses than non-reproductive individuals, and that they will be more aggressive toward same-sex intruders than opposite-sex ones, regardless if the intruder is located in the border of the center of their territory. Now, if the monkeys are defending their food, one could expect that when facing an intruder, all group members of both sexes, either together or not, would defend their food resources with no regard to the intruder's sex, especially if the intruder is located in the center of their territory. This is where the monkeys spend the more time and supposedly where they have the majority of their food resources. So for evaluating these predictions, I conducted experiments on 6 different groups from the main study area of the Owl Monkey project. This is the map with the territories of all the groups that we monitor really, really regularly. And the pairs territories are pretty stable. It has been the same map almost for the last 25 years. And as you can see, the borders of the territory of the monkeys' territories, they greatly overlap with the borders of neighboring groups. And on each group, one member of the breeding pair was fitted with a radio collar. So this made possible the identification of individuals. Each group was presented with 6 experimental conditions. So we reproduced a familiar graph, tonal and control calls. Remember graph, these were male calls, tonal were female calls. And for a control stimulus, we use a bird that it is common in the area. And we reproduced these unfamiliar calls from the border and center of each group territory. And we observed the monkeys first during a previous segment of 20 minutes, where we just wanted to establish the behavioral baseline. Then we observed the monkeys for another 20 minutes of continuous stimulus presentation. And we kept going, observing the monkeys for another 40 minutes, just to see how do they react to the stimulus presented before. And we register the first reaction the monkeys had. Who was the monkey first reacting, their latency. So this is how long it took the monkeys to react, the distance between the focal group and where the speaker was located, and 3 sociosexual behaviors. We registered some marking the branches. This is monkeys rubbing their tails in the branches to kind of mark their territories. We also register some marking their partners. They do the same, but over the partner. And we register urine wash behaviors. This is when the monkeys drop deposit a few drops of urine in their feet and hand, and they start walking on the trees. And what we could see is that males and females reacted very differently. Only adults reacted to the stimulus and only to other monkey calls. They did not react to the control calls. And the monkeys reacted by approaching their partner and sometimes by also marking them. Individuals, when we presented male calls, when we presented the graph hoods, we saw here that adult males were much more likely than adult females, or they were pretty much the ones that reacted the most. But we can see that in 2 occasions, the pair reacted together, and in 1 occasion, it was the adult female who reacted first. Different situation happened when we reproduced female calls. Here we can see that only females reacted to these calls. They were the only ones that first reacted to the stimulus. We also saw that individuals responded on average twice as fast to graph hoods than they did to tonal hoods. This differential response toward the male and female calls was also obvious when we analyzed the distances between the focal group and the speaker. The monkeys only approached the speaker when male calls, when graphs, were presented. And it was always the adult male who led the movement. We model their sociosexual behaviors. Here I will only show you the results from a SEM marking the branch, but the other social behaviors follow the same pattern. And as you can see here, these are the numbers of SEM markings and the different types of calls that we presented: in blue males, in purple females, and if the speaker was located in the border or the center of each group territory. And we saw that the place where the playback was located, border or center, did not elicit much differences. We can see the same pattern of responses in both sides. But sexes reacted very different depending to the type of call presented. So we saw that males stem market their branches and also their partners more often than females did, but only when the calls we were presented were graph, and it was male calls. Now, females, they also reacted towards same-sex individuals, here when we presented tonals, but interestingly, they also reacted when we presented unfamiliar male calls. So this took us to start thinking, okay, what are the pairs actually defending from competitors? And more importantly, are males and females defending the same resources? Because they react differently. Both males and females, they clearly showed mate guarding behaviors, but they did so toward different stimulus. So we saw that males only reacted to calls from same-sex individuals. Now, females also reacted to same-sex call, but also to male calls. The responses of males are in agreement with classical conceptions of the mate guarding hypothesis, where males would be unable to monopolize more than one spatially distributed female, so they would choose to stay with just one partner while trying to avoid other males to get access to copulate with her. Yet female responses, the fact that they also reacted toward male calls, they generated additional questions. Recent reviews pointed out that a key factor for pair living and sexual monogamy were these intolerant females, especially distributed around resources that would facilitate their reproduction and their infants' survival. However, it may be that not only food, but also other limited resources like paternal care is what it is actually limiting females' reproductive success. That way, females would defend their partners as a way to secure the services that males provide. This is also in line with recent results from a wild population of titty monkeys. Titty monkeys, they also have a social system really, really similar to what we see in our monkeys. And another grantee, Leakey grantee, Dr. Sofia Dolotovskaya, she found that females were more responsible for maintaining proximity and for doing grooming to their mates when infants were present. Also, in a previous lunch break science, Eduardo Fernández Duque already explained us the importance of paternal care in the species. Except for lactation, males really do everything else in this species. So even when most phylogenetic analyses agree on the fact that paternal care would have evolved after pair living and sexual monogamy, the services that the male provide as caring the infant, this may still be an important factor in regulating the behavioral responses of the monkeys and in maintaining their social organization and mating system. And with this, I would like to thank Leakey Foundation, of course, for their support to my project and everyone else involved. And please feel free to contact us if you have any further questions about our monkeys or animal sociality. We'll be really, really glad to hear about you.
That was an amazing talk. I can't wait to get to the questions. But before we get to the questions, we are going to actually be testing your owl monkey vocalization skills. I'm sorry, not Alba. We won't be testing your skills.
Okay.
Our viewers. Okay, so the way this works is Alba will play owl monkey's vocalization. The vocalization will be repeated several times, and you will all very carefully listen to identify if the vocalization is from a female or a male owl monkey. There will be several rounds, so be sure when you put your assessment in the chat to mention which round you are voting for. Okay, so here we have our first round. So, Alba, what might help our viewers assess?
Well, this is an easy one, and I would say, like, just for starting, just try to think about the sound. Is this super noisy, or can I hear a more pure sound? If you hear more pure or tonal sounds, that would like mean that you are hearing a female vocalizing. But if you hear like these noisy vocalizations, almost like a dog barking, usually that is a male saying that hello from the periphery.
Let's hear it one more time. Okay, we've got some initial assessments. Let's see what we have here. We have one for male, one for female, and we have another vote for male. So seems that the majority of our viewers think that this is a male vocalization. Alba, what is the correct answer?
It is a female. David around there was right. It is a female. Oh. It is a more tonal and pure sound.
Oh, we just had just before you mentioned it, we had one more vote for female, so it was tied.
Oh. So okay.
Okay, now let's go into round 2, and be sure when you are submitting your assessments to mention which round you are voting for. Okay, so let's listen to round 2. Okay, well, this is a very different vocalization. What might help our viewers guess on this one?
Well, I will tell them that always pay more attention into the second syllable. Like the biggest difference are always in the second syllable. So if you are kind of like not sure what is going on during the first one, try to put more attention in the second one.
Okay, let's listen to it one last time. Well, we have quite a few assessments on this one. Let's see here. We have male, male. We have another male, male. Definitely seems the majority.
Okay.
Okay, another male. So what is the correct answer, Alba?
You were all right. That was a male.
Perfect. So now we have our final round. Let's hear that vocalization. This one's a little trickier.
Yeah, it is. I will tell the audience to always pay attention to the second syllable, because if you see the second syllable changing a little bit, that gives you a hint of what it is.
Okay, let's hear it one last time. Okay, let's see. We have we have quite a few assessments coming in. Let's see here. We have male. We have male, female, male, female, female. It seems like they're pretty tied. So yeah. What is the correct answer?
That was a female calling. And we just know this because the second is a little bit more tonal, it's a little bit more pure, it's a little more defined. So that gives us the hint, like that it's a female.
Well, thank you so much. It was such a fun. We've never had like an audio activity, and it must be. I mean, it must be kind of cool to be out in the forest and hear those sounds.
Yeah, it is. It also takes time to be able to differentiate these calls in the field, because you have all this noise environment, like birds and frogs singing. So it also takes time to be familiar with these calls.
So now let's take some questions from our viewers. If you are watching and haven't submitted your questions, get those questions in the chat right now. Let's see here. Our first question, let's see what our first question is. Okay, so Lisa asks, you mentioned that it takes a lot of people in the field to capture all of the data. What kind of numbers does it take, both in terms of research or students and in terms of support staff?
Well, that's a really good question. And I don't think I have a magic number. Like, I guess it depends on the project and also the time of the year you need to monitor. Like, there are times that you need more intense monitoring. For example, right now, we are seeing the first babies in the forest. So we really want to have more people in the field trying to collect these really brief events that, okay, now we have a group change here, or this infant has disappeared, or whatever other group change you can see. So it depends on the time, and it depends on the project. I don't think I have a clear answer for that question. I would say, like, as much as better, as much as you can, that would be always better. But it absolutely depends on the project. When you have as many groups as we have, like, we monitor a lot of groups regularly, you need kind of like a lot of people in the field. But that a lot can be 3 person or can be 15. It depends.
So our next question comes from Jeannie. Do owl monkeys have observable monthly ovulation patterns like humans?
No, that I'm aware of. No, and so they have kind of clear socio-ecological periods because this is a species. I'm talking about Autus azarae. That's the species we study here in Argentina. It can be different from for Autus in Colombia or in Panama or in Peru. But here the monkeys are really, really seasonal. So all the babies are usually born in 2-3 months. That it starts like at the end of September to the beginning of December. So that gave us a good sense of the other socio-ecological periods, like when are females getting started to get pregnant, or when we see the monkeys copulating more frequently. So we know the socio-ecological periods, but we don't have any observable clue about the hormonal status of females. That was the question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Our next question comes from Brandon. Brandon asks, in your research, have you drawn any insights into the evolution of monogamy in humans?
I wish. That's a really good question. Well, like, I think every piece of research helped to build this big picture. I don't think there is a unique answer to the evolution of monogamy in humans. There are several factors that have been proposed over the years and in the literature to explain that. But I choose to study one of these traits, for example, sexual selection, and I also choose to study the behavioral mechanisms, these mate guarding behaviors. And yeah, I could propose that these may be some traits similar to those that early humans also show, but fossil proof is kind of like, it's small and it gives like a lot of space for theoretical models. So I'm just like going into a little piece of this huge picture of human evolution. I choose to think that sexual dimorphism has an important role in this evolution of human monogamy.
We have another question from, I actually was emailed this question. Do owl monkeys have any predators?
They do. Owl monkeys as a genus, they do. They have a lot of predation, like in the north part of their distribution. But here in Argentina, we have never seen any predation event, which is really, really weird because we have been monitoring these groups for 25 years. So we haven't registered any predation event. They must be eaten by something. They usually show this, they show and behavioral arousal, so they start emitting alarm calls and they they are pretty nervous around a type of animal that it is called Ada barbara. This is like a huge ferret. Is that the name in English? It's called Taira. So when they see Tairas, they are really, really nervous. They start calling alarms. So we think that those are their predators, but we have never registered any predation event. This is also one of the factors proposed to explain why here these monkeys also have this diurnal activity. Like they don't need to be that much aware of predators than in the northern part of their distribution.
We have another question from Brandon. Brandon asks, what is the one biggest mystery we haven't solved regarding owl monkeys?
I would say that would be something related with floaters, because once they disperse, it's really hard to follow them. You lose them really easily. I remember one time we captured these solitary floaters. This solitary floater, it was a male. We called them Soto. We fed it with a radio collar. We were so happy because we would be able to follow him around. And the next day, he disappeared. Like he wasn't near the area at all. We have data of many floaters over the years that we have been following. But I would say like the biggest mystery is like the life of these monkeys. Like, okay, what do they do? The processes of mate choice. We know that new pairs are only formed because a floater comes into the group and just replace the resident adult. But we do not know, okay, so as the other pair, as the other member of the pair, what makes you wanting to stay with this new individual instead of fighting for your old partner? So I would say like floaters and mate choice and still a big mystery in our monkeys, but we are getting there. With time, we will get there. We will get to explain and to answer some of the questions about that.
My last question for you is, do you have any advice for those who are watching who are interested in studying primates?
Yes, I would tell them to be brave, to do not hesitate to try new things or new experiences just because they didn't do them before. And also do not hesitate to reach out to junior or senior researchers with questions or with doubts or with even looking for advice. I have found that most of the people, it's always really nice and willing to help you. So we know that getting research experience can be difficult in terms of the availability of positions, especially in primatology, the availability of positions and even the cost of going to the field. But as long as you have like the willing to do it, and you will certainly find a team that you can work with or you can learn from. So yes, be brave, be open to learn new things, and modest with the things you still don't know. So you can incorporate those to the team, and mostly be in touch. Like, let's keep talking, guys.
Well, Alba, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me.
We hope that you'll all be able to join us on October 21st for our next episode of Lunch Break Science. We'll meet Leakey Foundation grantee Shanti Papu and learn about the prehistory and archaeology of several stratified sites in India. Definitely be there. Thank you all for taking a break from your day and feeding your brain with the Leakey Foundation. Until next time, stay hungry for knowledge. Bye.
Lunch Break Science is brought to you by the Leakey Foundation and is made possible by the generous support of the Anne and Gordon Getty Foundation and Camilla and George Smith. Visit us at leakeyfoundation.org to learn more about the Leakey Foundation, today's guest scientist, and how you can help support human evolution research and educational programs like Lunch Break Science. Right now, all donations will be matched by generous donors, meaning your impact will be doubled. Miss an episode of Lunch Break Science? Catch up on past episodes and browse our library of Leakey Foundation lectures on our YouTube channel. Still hungry for science and can't wait till our next episode? Check out the Leakey Foundation's award-winning podcast, Origin Stories, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the Leakey Foundation's YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or sign up for our newsletter to be the first to hear about exciting upcoming episodes and programs, as well as groundbreaking discoveries in human evolution research.